The Bengals got defensive on the first couple of days of the open negotiating period, with free agency set to begin on Wednesday afternoon. Cincinnati adding 3 members to a defense that has been one of the worst in the NFL over the past few years. They also said goodbye to Carl Lawson and William Jackson III, who signed in New York and Washington respectively. So is the Bengals defense better? Well, let's break it down right now, starting with Trey Hendrickson. The 26-year-old defensive end comes from the Saints. He spent 4 years there, was in Carl Lawson's draft class. He was taken with the 103rd overall pick in the 2017 NFL draft. The Bengals selected Lawson 13 picks later. So what are they getting with Hendrickson? Well, you're getting a guy that has been more productive recently than Lawson. Had 13.5 sacks in 2020. Certainly someone that appears to be ascending and hasn't had the injury issues that Lawson has had. The biggest difference between the two contracts, by the way, Trey Hendrickson, 4 years, $60 million. Lawson, 3 years, $45 million, is the guaranteed money. So I think the Bengals preferred to replace Lawson with someone of this ilk, right? Cut from the same cloth that can put pressure on opposing quarterbacks. But I think they preferred to keep Lawson. And the difference is the Jets gave him $30 million guaranteed and the Bengals only giving Hendrickson $10 million guaranteed. Now, with that said, he has been productive. 13.5 sacks, as I mentioned, was tied for the NFC lead with Aaron Donald, second in the NFL last season. And he's a guy that, along with Sam Hubbard, the Bengals are hoping can evolve, can push forward, can continue to develop, and be on the field more. He was only on the field for 53% of the Saints' defensive snaps last season. That needs to jump up to 65, 70% now that he's in Cincinnati. He's going to have a bigger role. And to his credit, so far what we've seen throughout his career is exactly that. He's been able to increase the workload year by year by year. The past 2 seasons, it has gone up. And oddly enough, both Lawson and Hendrickson have a career total of 20 sacks apiece through 4 seasons. Obviously, Hendrickson had many more in 2020. It wasn't the only move the Bengals made, because that one kind of a wash, right? I mean, Hendrickson might be a slight downgrade, but it's pretty close. But you don't feel like the Bengals are getting better. So what they also did is sign 2 corners. And this is what's interesting. Never really felt like they were going to keep William Jackson III. He ends up signing with Washington and agreeing to terms on Tuesday night. A 3-year, $40.5 million deal, $26 million guaranteed. Very similar, outside of the guaranteed money, to what Trey Waynes got from the Bengals last offseason. But again, the guaranteed money, much different. Waynes, $15 million guaranteed, $26 million for Jackson in Washington. So what did the Bengals do? Well, they decided, and they kind of made the decision, because they agreed to terms with Mike Hilton and Chidobe Awuzie from the Dallas Cowboys. He's entering his 5th NFL season, former 2nd-round pick. And just to make sure I get the pronunciation right, Chidobe, how do you say your name?
Chidobe Awuzie, Colorado.
He goes by Cheeto, by the way. That's his nickname, which is much easier to say, Chido. Here's the thing. This guy is lightning in a bottle. He's extremely fast. 22 miles an hour track down of Saquon Barkley a couple of years ago. So extremely athletic, a guy who has really good ball skills. Is he going to get beat? Absolutely. But he signs a 3-year, $21 million deal. And to me, I kind of like the value the Bengals are getting here. And not kind of, I do. I'll put it out there. I do. Because in Awuzie, you're getting a physical, athletic corner on the opposite side of Trey Waynes. He's a good tackler, and he makes plays on the ball. That doesn't mean that he's not going to get beat. Every corner is going to get beat. I don't think that this unit in Trey Waynes, Mike Hilton, and Chidobe Awuzie is going to be this insane cover group. But you have Jesse Bates for that right on the back end that can hopefully hide some of those flaws. But I think they're going to be hard hitting. And speaking of that, let's get to Mike Hilton, because I think Bengals fans certainly more familiar with Hilton than Awuzie. Hilton's a guy who over the past couple of years has just tormented opposing slot receivers, including Tyler Boyd, who got a firsthand look at what Hilton brings to the table. They signed him to a 4-year, $24 million deal. And just some stats for Hilton: 51 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions, 7 passes defensed in 12 games in 2020. And here's the interesting thing, this courtesy of Next Gen Stats. He blitzed 148 times from the slot since 2017. That's the most by any quarterback in the NFL. 16 pressures and 3.5 sacks over that span on those blitzes. This guy gets after the quarterback. He has 9.5 career sacks. The Bengals, by the way, desperately need to generate more pressure. So we focus naturally on edge and in just the defensive line on getting pressure. But Hilton can bring that. He can help. And to me, what this signifies is, yeah, Lou Anarumo knows they need to generate more pressure, and Hilton can help them do that. By the way, the Bengals have only had 37 slot blitzes since 2017. So think about that. As a team, 37 versus 148, which is what Hilton brought. They're going to be blitzing a lot more with number 28. He won't be able to wear 28, by the way, with Joe Mixon having that, but he was 28 in Pittsburgh. I like what the Bengals have done. Awuzie, again, physical, a guy, 38 tackles, 5 passes defensed, 1 interception last year. Only played in 8 games because of a hamstring issue, but played in all 16 games in 2019. So it's not like you have big injury concerns there. And the thing I like about these guys the most, and Trey Waynes too, because people are down on his contract, and I get it, I understand it. At the same time, you're talking about Waynes, who was 27 when they signed him, entering his age 27 season. Hilton, 27. Awuzie, 25, entering age 26 season. These are guys that should be ascending. Awuzie, an elite athlete, a guy who runs a 4.4, certainly has the speed you're looking for a boundary corner. And so now your secondary, at least on paper, has a profile. I can see the vision. Physical, tough, hard-hitting, playmaking corners at all 3 spots. You got Waynes on one side, Awuzie on the other, Hilton in the slot, and then you got a guy in Jesse Bates who's arguably, I would say arguably the most underrated player in the NFL, and probably the most underrated player in the NFL on the back end at safety. Obviously, Von Bell roaming, delivering big hits. So I can see the vision that the Bengals have on defense. They certainly have plenty of cap space remaining, and that's the key. They have over $20 million, even after these signings, in cap space. They can free up another $15 million to $17 million, depending on how they structure Geno Atkins' release, by releasing Geno Atkins and Bobby Hart. So it's a no-brainer here. The Bengals can make more moves, but these are my thoughts on the first 3 guys. Trey Hendrickson, kind of a wash with Carl Lawson, kind of a wash, but who knows? Maybe he ends up being better against the run, more durable, can play every down, and this ends up being an upgrade. But to me, pretty much a wash, 6 in one hand, half a dozen on the other. As far as the cornerback position, I like what they did, because instead of having to go out and get a different nickel, they got out a high-end, arguably the best nickel cornerback on the market to go alongside an ascending player, they hope, in Awuzie, an elite athlete, and obviously Trey Waynes. They feel good about him. 3 members of the secondary, 3 corners that can all tackle, that are all reliable tackles, good athletes, have good long speed, and Awuzie and Waynes on the boundary. So we'll see how it works out, but you can certainly see where they're going and the profile they're looking for. For more on the Bengals, make sure you check out allbengals.com and hit subscribe right now. Do it right now. Hit subscribe as we grow this channel. Thank you so much for watching.